Boy, it's been a good morning. I'm glad I showed up. Great music, a lot of great stuff happening. In about 5 weeks, we send 10 of our people, including Farnsley, who did the great service this morning. Mitch is leading that crew to Borneo and Singapore. And part of the purpose is to help that crowd we're sending meet with and understand the variety of people who have been called of God to give their lives in the service of God, and they've answered that call. Far more have been called than have answered. Far more have been called than have answered. But they're going to meet with people that have answered the call, people from all walks of life that one day came to the place and said, I'm going to give it all to Jesus, and I'm going to do whatever he wants me to do. I know that when I talk to you about going to camp and helping us with the Highway City Gang, I know that when I talk to you about needing 100 people to staff summer Sunday school for our children at those 3 hours, I know that a lot of you begin to think there's just no way, and you've never really opened up to say, Lord, here is my life, here are my resources, I'm going to lay it all on the altar, and I am going to serve you when a call to serve comes up. Because you look at all of your inadequacies and decide all the reasons why it won't work for you. I very vividly remember the summer of 1943. I was 16 years old. I had graduated from high school. And even though some of you know I kid a lot, when I stand in this pulpit, you know if I'm telling jokes and you know if I'm kidding. And I'm not kidding you. I was shy. I was an introvert. I was out of a poor family. I always felt like we had less than everybody else. You know, the guy that was Dad's boss that lived in the other half of the duplex owned by the company, they went to Flint, Michigan and bought a new Buick every other year. I used to hate them for that. We never had a new car at all, and sometimes we had no car at all. They'd wheel in that big new Buick every other year. All it did was make me feel less than. And when I came finally under the conviction of God that he wanted me to put my life on the altar, I really didn't think I was giving him any big deal. And I had no idea what that would mean. But I wouldn't trade places with anybody I know. It has been an incredible time, and it is an incredible time watching God at work and being a part of it. I get to go tomorrow down to Corcoran, to the prison. There are 5,000 men in that prison. I have thought about that prison. I've also thought about the one in Avenel, where there's somewhere between 3,000 and 4,000 people. You know, sometimes you talk about Corcoran and people say, no, you mean Avenel. No, there are 2 prisons, one in Corcoran, one in Avenel. And I pray for them on occasion. We haven't done one visible thing to help those people in that work or to help those people who are in there. And when we couldn't put something together up north for our choir tour at the end of June, Charlotte put a note on my desk and said, perhaps we should think about the prison at Corcoran. And I picked up the phone this week. As soon as she laid the note on my desk, she's still standing. I picked up the note and I said, Hillary, find me a phone number for that prison down at Corcoran. And she came right back with the number, and I called in there and I said, I'd like to speak to the chaplain. And this guy came on the line and I said, hi, my name is Bufe Karraker. I'm pastor of Northwest Church in Fresno. And this guy said, Bufe Karraker. Now when somebody does that, I know they knew me way back when. They pronounce it right. They know the whole name. And I said, yeah, who are you? And he said, well, my name is Elijah Owens. I knew you at Westmont College in the late 1940s. God bless you, brother. Thanks for calling. What can I do for you? So I told him about our choir, and we'd like to come down there and do a concert. He said, wonderful. Wonderful. Let's talk about it. He said, you know, God is doing incredible things in the lives of individual men in this place. He said, we would welcome you. I said, what kind of facility? He said, chapel's too small. We have a cafeteria and we have outdoors. I said, where will they sit outdoors? He said, on the ground. What's your PA system like? Bring your own. I said, I think we need to have lunch. And so we arranged for lunch tomorrow. Charles Manson will have lunch down there tomorrow too. He and I will not be eating in the same dining hall, I don't think anyhow. But he's in that facility. But I called Al Vom Steeg. I'd seen him in a restaurant Friday, and he said, brother, tell your secretary to call my secretary and let's get lunch together. We need some fellowship. I said, I'll do it. And Saturday I thought about that, and I thought, Al needs to go with me to Corcoran. I called him Saturday at home, and I said, I know it's too late. In fact, he was at the church working. I know it's too late. I know Monday's schedule is set. But here's what I'm going to do. And I outlined it. And I said, we got to leave at 9:30. He said, pick me up at the house. So I'll pick him up tomorrow. We're going to go down there together. Because I asked him a key question. You know, if you know how to sell, Stan, if you know how to sell, it's really fun, isn't it? I said, what are you people doing for the folks in the Corcoran prison? Hey, did I have a guilt trip on him? He said nothing. He knew he had to cancel whatever's out there. And he's going with me. And we're going to have a great time to fellowship on the round trip. Plus, we're going to get to meet Elijah Owens. I can't think of who Elijah, look, 40 plus years ago, see, Elijah Owens sounds, he's one of two things. Either he's black or he's from the deep south. I do not remember that there were any blacks at Westmont in the late 1940s. I'm looking forward to meeting this guy and getting caught up. And I was not such a superstar that's why he remembered me. I was notorious, but I wasn't a superstar. It's different, you know. But I'm looking forward to all of that. You see, the wonderful opportunity to serve the Lord, and the door's open. And I'll tell you something. I told Randy this, and Tuesday night at choir, he mentioned it to the choir. And man, that room began to buzz with people thinking about going inside at the Corcoran prison. You know, when you go inside one of those places, if they have a revolution and grab you and hold you hostage, they will not negotiate for your release. They won't do that at the Fresno County Jail. You in there visiting a prisoner and something explodes, you may stay a while. So, are we willing to lay anything on the line to serve the Lord? I came across a passage of Scripture, Colossians chapter 4. Let me give you your assignment first. Your assignment this week, two passages. Colossians 4, verses 5 to 14. Colossians chapter 4, verses 5 to 14. And 1 John chapter 2, verses 14 to 17. That's part of that passage that Mitch read for you. Colossians 4, 5 to 14, and 1 John 2. 14 to 17. Listen to what he says starting here at verse 5 in Colossians 4. Make the most of your chances to tell others the good news. Well, I know I'm in good company, people, when I continue to press you and say, you need to be sharing the gospel with people every day of your life. I know I'm in good company because that's what Paul did. Just kept pushing and shoving and pushing and shoving and reminding and exhorting and telling, come on, come on, come on, do it. Be wise in all your contacts with them. Let your conversation be gracious as well as sensible. For then you'll have the right answer for everyone. And then he starts down a list. And he lists 8 guys, and I want to just whip through these 8 guys. You may find yourself in one of these groups. Tychicus, our much loved brother, will tell you how I'm getting along. See, this is a letter. That's what this is. A lot of people don't understand it. He wrote this little book. No, he wrote a letter to these people in the city of Colossae, where he had been, where he had preached, where he had taught. And here he's writing this thing along to them to let them know his situation, and he's sending it with certain people that have the liberty to travel around. So often when Paul was writing these letters, he was in prison. He was in prison when he wrote this one. So he had to have a courier to carry this letter. And he said, Tychicus, we'll tell you how I'm getting along. He is a hard worker and serves the Lord with me. I've sent him on this special trip just to see how you are and to comfort and encourage you. Tychicus. What a goofy name. Here's a guy that is mentioned 5 different times in the writings of the Apostle Paul. He's a man who knew how to live under authority. He had a servant's spirit. Oh, he could fill in and preach for Paul if Paul wasn't able to. But he did not mind being sent by Paul to do things for Paul, as a willing servant can multiply another person's effectiveness. So Tychicus multiplied Paul's effectiveness. His name never became a household word like Paul's did, but his influence, his impact of his life did not just fade away. Here's a man who had great influence with people because he was willing to be a servant. Is that where the hang-up is with you? You're not really willing to be a servant? You want to be in charge? Let's go on down the list. In verse 9, he says, I'm also sending Onesimus, a faithful and much loved brother, one of your own people. Onesimus, a faithful and much loved brother. You know who this guy is? He's a runaway slave. His owner was one of Paul's rich friends. And Paul is sitting in jail, and one day they open the door and throw this guy in, and it's Onesimus, and he looks up and says, oh dear Lord, what have I done now? This is the Apostle Paul. He is one of my owner's best friends. See, Paul knew how to have friends all up and down the line. Rich friends, poor friends. He knew how to get excited when he stayed anywhere. He knew how to be content. But he could enjoy the lap of luxury just like he could handle it when he was in prison and had nothing good at all. Paul understood all. Here's Onesimus falls in there, runaway slave, which was a very serious offense. And Paul led him to Christ there in jail. And when it was time for Onesimus to get out of there, to go back to his owner, Paul wrote this little letter of Philemon. Great little letter. And basically he's telling Philemon, take Onesimus back. He says, I'd like to keep him here. And he said, I know his name Onesimus, which means useful. He hasn't been of much use to you in the past, but now he's going to be a real use to both of us. I'm sending him back to you, and with him comes my own heart. Then he says a couple of very interesting things. If I really am your friend, Philemon, give Onesimus the same welcome you would give to me if I were the one who were coming. If he has harmed you in any way or stolen anything from you, charge me for it. And then he just grinds right down on Philemon. I love this. He said, I'll pay it back. I, Paul, personally guarantee this by writing it here with my own hand. But I won't mention how much you owe me, Philemon. The fact is, Philemon, you owe me your very soul. I'm the guy that led you to Christ, Philemon. You think I'm wonderful. If this guy has done anything, put it on my account. Charge it to me. What a great, great thing to say. And to send this guy back. And what's he call him? Back here in Colossians, calls Onesimus a faithful and much loved brother. A runaway slave. A guy who may have stolen from his master. A guy who may have done things that were really bad. But you know what? With God, history is history. We have a great little phrase we use today. We say about some deal happens, we only say, He's history. Huh? We all understand that. It's over. History is history with God. If you have come to him and truly repented and have received forgiveness, it's time to begin to serve him and not live back there saying, but I was such an awful person. Get out of that. God has given you forgiveness. Get on with the area of service that needs to be yours. And that's exactly what Onesimus did, a faithful and much loved brother. And then Aristarchus, verse 10, who was with me here as a prisoner, he sends his love. Aristarchus, who is this guy? Well, he was a part of Paul's troop. He served in prison the same reason Paul served in prison, for his faith. He hadn't violated any law, but he was an open testimony of the good things of God, and they got tired of hearing him preach and they threw him in. Happened to him the first time up in Ephesus. In Acts chapter 19, the mob rose up against Paul, and they were trying to grab for Paul, and he got away, and they grabbed Aristarchus, and he got hauled off to jail because he was part of the evangelistic team up there. You find him over and over again through Macedonia and through Greece. You read the book of Acts, and you see these tremendous things, and you find Aristarchus is many times in jail, and then in Acts 27, he heads to Rome with Paul and goes through the shipwreck and does all of this. You see, he helped Paul carry the load of the churches and part of the difficulties of life. He was loyal. He was an encouragement. He was a comfort. You cannot operate in the number one position in any setup in the Lord's work without having people around you who are like that. Clifford and I have been friends for 35 years. It's no accident that Jerry is here as our business manager. He is a good businessman. And when he became available, I said to him one day on the golf course, "What are you going to do?" He said, "I don't know. But I'm looking." And I said, "I need a guy." See, he's been counsel for me over many years. When I was the vice president of Youth for Christ for the Western States, he was my number one counselor. The guy that said, here's how we ought to do it. He's never on this platform. He's not really comfortable here. But behind the scenes, he works and does a wonderful, wonderful job for us as a loyal, encouraging brother of mine to get the work done that must be done here. And then he says, Mark. He sends his love. He's a relative of Barnabas. And as I said before, give Mark a hearty welcome if he comes your way. Mark's the guy we call the man with a second chance. Mark is the guy that went on the evangelistic team with Paul and Barnabas, and they got a long ways from home, and Mark got homesick and said, man, I'm hanging it up and going home, and split, left the team, went back home. And after Paul and Barnabas had finished that and gotten back to home base, they're getting ready to crank up and go again. And Barnabas says, we got to take Mark. And Paul said, not on your life, that sucker fizzled out on us. He's not going again on my team. Fuzz on him. And Barnabas said, wait a minute. The kid's repented of that. The kid wants to serve the Lord. Forget him. You want him? You got him. I'm getting a new partner, and you can take him and go if you want to, but I'm taking Silas. These men really had a division of opinion. Two godly guys with a great division of opinion. And so what did God get out of it? He got two teams. He got two teams. And Barnabas took Mark. And Mark got a second chance. And Mark responded well to the second chance. And God rewarded him. The Gospel of Mark, yeah, same guy. Wrote it after all of this. See, some of you may have failed somewhere along life's way. Maybe even you were a part of the Lord's work. Maybe you are full-time somewhere and you failed miserably. You don't even tell anybody that part of your history because you're so ashamed of your failure, and you're still living back in the failure instead of coming and saying, God, forgive me. I want to get up and go on and serve you somewhere, somehow. Open the door and I'll begin to serve. Even in a place like teaching kids in Sunday school, that's a place to start, Lord. I'll go. I don't have to be big time. I can just go and help. The man with a second chance. And then he said, Justice also sends his love. He's been a comfort to me too. Justice. Jesus was the Greek form of the Hebrew name Joshua, which means Jehovah is salvation. Boy, he had a great name. Every time they called his name, they knew it meant something. We live in a time where names don't mean anything. They call Buford. Doesn't mean a blame thing. But when they said, Jesus, Son of Justice, boy, Jehovah is salvation. He got a great start. He had a great self-image. He could have seen himself, I'm going to be the number one honcho. I'm going to do it all. He's only mentioned one time in the scriptures, right here. Just this little blip. You know, it's easy for people to decide when and where they're going to serve. Tough to say, I'm going to serve, and the recognition is beside the point. I just need to go and serve the Lord. I had a wonderful time here Friday night for about an hour and a half with our Awana leaders. The Awana Grand Prix. Boy, what a time. Hundreds of people here. A lot of adults here that don't come to a service. Their kids are in Awana. I saw dads there that won't come to a service here. Not because they go somewhere else. They don't go anywhere to church. But they were there with their kids. They listen to their kids say the verses they learn in Awana. They were here having a little picnic. They were here running a car in the Grand Prix. And I looked at all of our people that were working in Awana. Scores and scores and scores of our people that work every Wednesday night in Awana and then ran this big Friday night show for the Grand Prix. What a time. And as I drove away from here, I was running through a list of names and saying, God, bless them, bless them, bless them for working without recognition, just knowing they're doing the work and the will of God by touching the lives of these kids. You willing to do that? Take a lesser spot, but serve the Lord? And then he said, Epaphras, from your city of Colossae, a servant of Christ Jesus, sends you his love. He is always earnestly praying for you, asking God to make you strong and perfect and to help you know his will in everything you do. I can assure you that he has worked hard for you with his prayers. Boy, what a guy this was. He had started this church in Colossae. You go to Colossians 1 and you read about him. He was the man that brought them the gospel and saw them turn from their heathen ways and turn to Jesus Christ. His great ministry was wrestling with the Lord in prayer. Now, we use that term wrestling today, and we think of big-time wrestling. This is not Hulk Hogan we're talking. This is not show business. That's show business. Okay? We're talking about honest to God, having it all on the line and being in that ring and going to the mat. That's what Epaphras did. And what did he ask God for? He asked God to make these people strong and perfect, that is complete, and to help them know the will of God in everything they did. And he worked hard in prayer. People, when our prayer life, individually and as a congregation, begins to make some demands on us, we'll see tremendous differences in the ministry of this church. Many of you have said to me in the last 2-3 weeks, as you heard me talk about my dad, and one of the things I will miss not having my dad on this earth is knowing that he wrestled in prayer on my behalf every day. He didn't just throw my name out. He really talked to God about me and the ministry that I had and the work of this church and the responsibilities of giving leadership to it. He really knew how to talk to God about that. And many of you have said to me, Bufe, I want to be one of those who takes up some of that slack. And I'm grateful to you, but I want to tell you something. I'm talking about the hard work of prayer. I must have people who pray for me, who desperately seek God on my behalf. You're going to pray for me? Do it. But do it with an earnestness and with a sincerity that is strong before the Lord. And then he says, dear Dr. Luke sends his love. Dr. Luke, yeah, physician. A man who set aside his practice. Remember, it was 400 years before Jesus that Hippocrates, the guy that came down with the Hippocratic oath that doctors still swear to today, took medicine out of the hands of various religious orders that were doing all kinds of abacadabra stuff over sick people, and began to establish it as a science and tell people, you need to watch your diet, you need to get some exercise. Same old stuff they're telling us today. Rather than just load the medicine on people, rather than put little charms around their neck. And Luke had taken that oath. But he put his life on the line rather than set up a lucrative practice for himself. Here he saw this servant of God that had a body that was shot. And he needed a personal physician. I mean, his body was not only shot, he was always getting in places where it was being roughed up, knocked around, beaten up. And Luke was there to help him. You know, Spurgeon said to young men that came to him and talked about the ministry, he said, don't enter the ministry until you've proven success in another occupation. It's a very interesting statement. Don't enter the ministry until you've proven success in another occupation. There are folks around who think the ministry and the missions are made up of a kind of a catch-all of folks that couldn't make it doing anything else. I resent that remark. I take my staff and stack them alongside of your staff. I don't give a rip what business you're in. I'll take my staff and line them up right down the line. And they will match your workers in everything except salary. They'll outwork your people. They'll outthink your people. They'll outdo your people. They'll do anything that's necessary to get the job done without crabbing and complaining, because they know they're committed to Jesus Christ and they have a responsibility to do that work to the glory of God. Though we're doing what God has called us to do, and we could do a lot of other things and amass more of this world's goods. That's who Luke was. Then he mentions one other guy. Demas sends his love. Demas was with Paul at this time, but in 2 Timothy chapter 4 and verse 10, we read this about Demas. Demas has left me. He loved the good things of this life and went to Thessalonica. He loved the good things of this life and left me. This may be who you are. Once upon a time walked with God, worked and sought the will of God. Somehow you're here today and you're trying to find your way back. You got to where you love the good things of this life so much that you decided you had to get it all here, and you were tired of somebody telling you what you were going to get when you got to heaven. You kind of kissed that off to get what you could get here, and you found out when you got what you got here, it was ashes. Not nearly what you thought it was going to be. The great excitement was the race, and when you got it, dissatisfied. 1 John chapter 2, 14, 15, 16, and 17, part of your reading for this week. I want to read it again. And so I say to you, fathers who know the eternal God, and to you young men who are strong, with God's word in your hearts, and have won your struggle against Satan, this is written to Christian people, stop loving this evil world and all that it offers you. It was a problem then, it's a problem now. For when you love these things, you show that at that time you do not really love God. You've exchanged your love for God for the love of these things. And then he makes a list that sounds like it comes right out of this morning's newspaper. All these worldly things, these evil desires. 1, the craze for sex. 2, the ambition to buy everything that appeals to you. And 3, the pride that comes from wealth and importance. These 3 things are not from God. Hear that again. Hear that list. The craze for sex, the ambition to buy everything that appeals to you, and the pride that comes from wealth and importance. These are not from God. See, I understand why we don't have time nor money with which to serve the Lord. Because we pay attention so easily to these 3 things. Some of you are robbing God because you're crazy for sex. Some of you are robbing God because your ambition is to buy everything that appeals to you. And you're in hock up to here. And when I stand here and talk about giving God what is his, you get angry with me because you've made some stupid decisions to put yourself in hock. And you don't know how to bail out, and you just keep keeping yourself there. The pressure, the television pressure, the impulse as you walk down the mall, I got to have that, I got to have that, and you've bought things and things and things, and you're still not happy, and you're not smart enough to say, I know it doesn't work. And thirdly, the pride that comes from wealth and importance. You said to yourself, by the time I'm 40 years old, I'm going to be a multi-millionaire. And you've worked like crazy. And you got there. And you walk down the street, and you're wealthy. And you think you're important. And in your mind, you're really something. And somebody calls you Mister. And you say, that's the way it ought to be. They all ought to be calling me Mister. They knew the little pit that I've crawled out of. They'd all be calling me Mister. God says these are not from God. They are from this evil world itself. And this world is fading away. People, this world is fading away. As we have watched our television sets in the last 3 weeks, this thing called Satanism, that a lot of folks have said when us pastors have pounded the pulpit and said, stay out of that stuff. Don't mess with the Ouija board. Don't mess with fortune tellers. Don't get involved in any way in anything that has to do with Satan and his crowd. And you've said, oh, big deal. And then they're digging them up. They're digging them up. That they've killed them in some satanic rite. And people, if you heard the story that's told by the chief of police of Fresno State College, Fresno State University, talking about the satanic activity on that campus. The chief of police, they have one there. Some of you don't know they have one there, but they do. He gave a talk in a Rotary Club where one of my guys was recently. He said, I'm going to tell you what, I'll scare the wits out of you with what's happening in our town. Oh, we think Mexico. Yeah, those goofy people down there, they're all on loco weed and all of that. We're talking Fresno, California. Come to the party. As a believer, don't think you can't be touched. You mess around with this kind of stuff, you'll be a part of the world that fades away. These evil, forbidden things will go with it, but whoever keeps doing the will of God will live forever. The question, who does God use? He uses those that are willing. Just look at the list. As you read this week, this passage, look at the list. Willing, not demanding, capable, called and serving. And I pray that as you go out of here and you think about a little pink card that maybe you stuck in your pocket. Well, think about it. Just lay it in your Bible, Colossians chapter 4, will you? Huh? That'd be a good place for you to have it, where you think about it this week. Do I need to serve the Lord in that area? Do I need to take part of my summer and do that? Yeah. As you think about North Fork and 40 kids from Highway City, boy, do I need to do that? Could be. We need a bunch of folks to do it. It's not going to happen by itself. Great opportunity. Opportunities all around. It's time you responded to them. If you're not saved, maybe you need to get a little closer. Come go to camp, chop onions, spend some time hanging around some Christian people. You might get saved. Huh? You bet. Stand together and let's pray. Lord, we just come today so grateful for all you've done for us. Incredible that you've taken the likes of us, many who've come and said, I'll serve. I'll do the best I can. Don't know how good I am, but I sure want to put myself under somebody's leadership, and I'll do what I'm told. Help us, Father, to stock this 100 people we need for summer, to get the folks we need for this camp. We got the kids. That's no problem. We just need the workers. And Lord, I pray that you would bless us as we go out of here and go past a book table. Think about, what should I get for me or for somebody else? I just thank you, Lord, that we've got so many people committed to finding ways to help bring folks closer to you. We praise your name. We trust you for a wonderful service tonight at 6 in that baptism time. So bless us and bring us back. And we'll give you thanks for it. In the name of the living Lord Jesus Christ, I pray. Amen. Amen. God bless you. Thank you so much for being here. Been a good day.